Hi, and welcome to That Matters. I'm Carly Spell.
And I'm Johnny Standing. And today we've got Dave Marriott, who is a shamanic practitioner and a really good friend of mine. I class him as a brother, love him dearly. And we'll have some wonderful edification on this subject. Since it's been something that's been there for thousands of years, seems to predate most religions, I think we're going to come up with something interesting here. And I think Dave works with the land mainly. That's true, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So what were your beginnings? How did you start to learn about shamanism?
Well, I guess, well, thank you both for having me here. It's the first podcast or interview like this I've done. Right. So I've always been kind of someone who's interested in nature. I was born up on a council estate, and we were fortunate enough to have one of these council houses with nature in your back garden. So opened the gate into an ancient woodland. So I spent most of my youth growing up and messing around down there, doing all sorts of stuff, Right. So that was kind of in my being at a young age. And my mum always used to say, she caught me looking out the bedroom window when I was a very young boy, always looking down in the wood, and she would be like, "What are you doing?" I'd be like, "I'm talking to the people down there." Wow. And it's strange because I do a lot of sitting out and lots of stuff with nature, quite intensive, but that's one wood I've never slept down ever on my own. So that was the beginning of me kind of feeling a presence in nature that was bigger than myself. So growing up, I had a pretty good childhood, had some deep trauma earlier on in around 11, 12-year-old. So I guess as I went forward into my early 20s, I was always kind of fascinated with the Native Americans and started reading the works of Carlos Castaneda and all his books. And they just fascinated me and they kind of resonated deeply within me. So when I was, I think 19 was the first time I just sort of gave everything up and went to America for 6 months. And just, I was playing music, but I was also going out and visiting the ancient rock art, petroglyphs and petroglyphs, and really interested in kind of the Four Corners region with the Navajo and the Hopi Indian reservations, and lightly touching the surface on their belief systems and how they lived with nature. And obviously shamanism is an expression of seeing the world in an animistic way, and like walking the lands and feeling that presence and that dreaming. I came back home when I was like 21, saved up some money, then I went out again for 9 months. So I just bought a VW camper van and headed down to Mexico and then went all the way up to Canada and just lived in this van.
Wow, fantastic.
For like 9 months.
That's the modern dream now, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I live the hippie lifestyle.
It's going to be Mad Max though this time. Yeah. It's like got AK-47s on the side, like zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, you might need it out there these days. So there's some interesting things happened out there. I became... I had a bit of a breakdown coming back, and I worked in a factory, and the whole thing stuff in my past just broke me apart.
The factory wasn't it?
Yeah, so I had this kind of mental state going on, and like just couldn't get out of it, and it was just driving me crazy. So I was looking for something to initially heal myself with. I had a connection with the land, but it just wasn't. I needed to get some answers of where this force was coming through. So I started learning about, how trauma affects us, and affects a community. And how it's deep within our system. So I became interested in that, and I went into a shop and it's kind of your typical thing. I just went to a magazine in there, and I think it was Sacred Hoop. It was kind of a spiritual shamanic magazine back in those days, like 90s. And I opened the page, and it was an American shaman in England, and her name was Arwyn Larkin. She was half Celt and half Navajo. And she came out of Flagstaff in Arizona. So there was a guy called Simon Buxton who has a sacred trust over in this country, and he was sponsoring her to come over. And I looked at this thing, and there was like 5 workshops, a couple of weekend ones and 3 intensive ones going on for 5 days in that year. So I went straight home and picked up the phone, rang him out, and I was like, I want to do all 5. And he was like, oh, people usually only do like 1 on the first. I was like, but I'm going to do all 5. So I jumped into that, and it was amazing. Yeah. And it's where I got my first shamanic healing. I guess you would call it a shamanic healing, but medicine healing in a circle. And I was able to be so free in my voicing of my kind of trauma and my experiences in front of people in such a well-held community where you trusted people from the outset because everyone was sharing. So that sharing circle, that, you know, talking stick they call it at the beginning of a circle, I always found that really hard to speak in front of people.
Yeah, it's such a powerful thing, isn't it, to be able to do, especially about trauma and such deep-rooted things. It's just that itself without the medicine, shall we say, I found very intense, very
really
powerful.
difficult. But in its simplicity, it's got the most power because you're being vulnerable.
Exactly,
And by being vulnerable, we have the ability
goosebumps.
to... well, that vulnerability, you know, helps us to empty out and to receive. You know, they call it hollow-boned in an indigenous culture. The Native American people would say being hollow-boned. So you empty out to receive spirit. And, you know, I think, you know, sitting in that circle and sharing I'd never share with anyone, you know, and just like, and then Arwyn doing this healing on me, and I actually physically felt the things that she was pulling out, this kind of energetic, kind of sticky stuff, actually fell. And when she pulled it out, I felt the vacuum it created in me, and then the grief, feel that vacuum, you know. And it was like, for me, it was like so profound. I was like, there's something in this, you know. So I was with her for a couple of years, and then I became an apprentice, and I went over to Flagstaff, become an apprentice with her, with a partner at the time I was with, and you know, some crazy synchronistic happenings were happening all the time, and you know, I mean, it was a crazy journey. So this kind of set me on my way. I mean, we journeyed in the camper van out there, and we were on our way to the ceremony. We had like 4 days or so. We were going to go to her house and have a initiation of sorts, an apprentice initiation. So we went to Chinle before that. I did, and you know, I sat by like on the top of the canyon. It was winter, it was cold, and went to Spider Rock, where the Navajo have their creation story myth centered around, where Spider Woman came down on this beautiful pinnacle of sandstone rock in the canyon. And I sat there and I was like, I wanted to go down into the canyon, but there's no way I could afford it. I was on a shoestring. And so I just put a prayer out there, and this is all learning things manifesting. We were talking about manifestation earlier on, and what it is. It's that, you know, energy flows or attention goes. And I just had that really clear intention. I wanted to go down into that canyon. But I couldn't get a guide down there because it's too expensive. So walked along the canyon face, and there was this old Navajo guy, like typical turquoise jewelry, long white hair, like this 60-something-year-old guy, big guy. His name was Sammy Tutsi. And he was carving cottonwood kachina dolls. He's like, hi, how you doing? I was like, I'm cool, yeah, how you doing? It's like, there's no one else there because it's winter, but he was still there hoping that someone would come along and buy his stuff. He's like, how you doing? I was like, I just had a bad night because I went to go to the public campsite over there, and tried to sleep there, but it just seemed really weird and just really, really strange, I said. So I drove off, and then I found another place, and then camped the night. But around the fire, I got shot at. Really? So like the shot even hit the fire. So just put the fire out. Really strange. Didn't go anywhere. Just got into the van, and he was like, "Yeah, well, the first place you went to was an old Native American burial ground. That's why you felt weird there, and getting shot at. That's kind of happened. There's a lot of black magic on these reservations." I was like, "Oh, cool. Because why don't you come and stay with me, like at my hogan? He's like a sheep farmer." And he goes, "And if you want, my family owns a lot of land down there, so you can come and I'll take you down there." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "You've just done that prayer in." So we went there, and I stayed in his hogan and feeding these little sheep and filling up the water and stuff. And it's like, the hogan's a traditional Navajo 8-sided kind of adobe building. Beautiful. It's very simple, but just all one room inside. Stayed with him for like 3 days. And his dad was like a 90-year-old shaman as well. So I didn't get to meet him, but we planned to. And he took us down into this canyon. It was great. And he said, like, these little ancient sites up on the walls and stuff like that. So and we went up into these little, I guess they were store places going back hundreds of years, not 1,000 years. And they were like corn hubs still there from, you know, they could have been placed there ceremonially. And the partner I was with at the time, she picked one up and was like, "I'm going to take it." I was like, "I wouldn't. You know, just leave it. Just don't touch anything from here. You know, it's got something about." No, I'm going to take it. Anyway, long story short, on the way to see Arwyn and go to the apprentice ceremony, we were going over the bridge heading into Flagstaff, and this kind of, I just saw this tornado come down this dry riverbed, and it ripped through the van. And just before that, I told my partner at the time to go and bury it under a pine tree before we went into Flagstaff. I didn't want that. I just felt wrong that this thing was with us. About 10 minutes later, this tornado came through and ripped the roof off. We had a fiberglass roof on top of the van, ripped it off. Everything went up in the air. We were like a convertible VW cab, and it's gone down on the road. It's landed on its upside down, but all the clothes were everywhere over the road, and I was picking all them up. So, and it hit this guy's truck, and he was a Navajo guy. I kept in touch with him and stuff, and we like.
And did the pine cone go with it?
The pine cone is still under that tree to this day, I hope. But it was the power of basically like all the synchronistic stuff, and it really got me interested in the power of medicine. There were so many teachings in that short space of time, and I was on that land for a lot of time. But that was like going into an apprenticeship, and that was kind of the way into it. It was just learning how sacred the land was, and how much, you know, offerings, how sacred they are to give to the land.
And the land is sacred. Everything's sacred. Really,
everywhere's sacred.
Anything in nature.
And I think what's interesting is, obviously, what council estate were you from?
Stone Quarry, East Grinstead.
East Grinstead. Where's East Grinstead? My geography's terrible.
It's like south of Gatwick. It's near Gatwick, about 8 miles from Gatwick Airport.
So it's interesting how healing journeys, like how that took you from a council estate, you know, east of Gatwick or Grinstead to, you know, Mexico, especially around that time. What year would that have been? What
so that was in my 20s, so I think that's 68, 78. So that was in
not that I want to give it away.
In the 90s. So it was in like 90s and late 90s and stuff.
And I think shamanism has become extremely popular in a certain sense, you know. So to have that experience and to have it from quite a while back, you know, I think there's a lot of new age kind of, you just stick a pair of pants on and wave a feather and call yourself a shaman. But what's interesting, and I've only just met Dave, but when, you know, just listening to your stories before we came on air, you know, is that kind of extent, you know, that extensive knowledge that you've got and all these kind of experiences, you know, and how you were trying to heal yourself and how that took you on that journey. It's the same with me and the law, really. Right. In kind of trying to find out the nature of, you know, the multiverse and everything, you know, took me on my journeys. It's took us all on ours. So it's taking a young boy from, you know, council estate in East Gatwick and plonking him in the, you know, in the middle of, say, like the Mexican desert. Or it's just,
but it doesn't happen to everybody, does it? It's not.
No,
exactly. In fact, you're the only person I know who's actually done that. And I'm 65 now, so I've met a lot of people who are into lots of things, and I have been to sacred ceremonies under a shaman. But it was a lady, which you know about. It was good. It was great, but that involved medicine being taken. You're more based in the land itself, aren't you?
I am. Yes.
Yeah. Could you explain a bit about that?
Yeah. So you know, I work a lot with the yew tree spirit. I live near the biggest yew tree forest in Europe, in a place called Kingly Vale, Valley of the Kings. There's 2 burial mounds on top that are 4,500 years old, and they were kings, Bronze Age kings buried there. And some of these yew trees up there, they're very hard to age a yew tree because they hollow out in the centre when they get to a point of like 800 years. They start hollowing out.
Hollow bones.
Yeah, hollow bone. They hollow in. Yeah, exactly. It takes them 800 years, right? But they've got a longer time. You know, I think the oldest one in the world is the Fortingall yew in central near Stirling, and that's like said to be 5,200 years old.
Yeah,
and yeah, so, you know, it's like we were speaking of earlier, like the reawakening to the Earth's dream, you know, and this kind of evolutionary consciousness that goes through everything, you know, and it's realigning to that in whatever way we choose or what it speaks to us. And, you know, a path of healing is you know, a shamanic path or a medicine path is not something that people generally should be grabbing at to do, really, because it's not
for everyone.
It's not for everyone, and it's not easy. You know, I've walked away from it. I walked away from it once for like 7 years.
Yeah.
I didn't want anything to do with it because, you know, after my period in America, I tried to translate that kind of quirk on it, the Native American one, like everyone was doing in those days, onto this land. Now, this land has a completely different energy than the Americas, and different kind of spirits, completely different. So you kind of lose your way a little bit.
So were you in North America? When I was saying Mexico, have I mixed that up?
No, I went through Mexico as well.
Oh, you did both. Right, sorry. Yeah,
so I done. So Victor Sanchez I worked with, and he was he was with Castaneda early days. They tried to get him to be part of their circle, and he didn't. But he was an anti-anthropologist. But he went to live with the Waradika and the Huichole. he lived with them for something like 15 years, but he lived in their community. So rather observing from the outside, writing in as an anthropologist would do, he was in the community writing from experience, which we spoke about earlier on. It's all about experience. You can't be anything without your experiences.
That's right.
And I think it is that direct experience. I was talking about this the other day on something completely, well, I suppose some of the interviews that we've been doing, like talking about dream states or narratives. I think that a lot of it is this kind of construct, especially at the moment with what's kind of going on. We get offered these narratives all the time, and it's this disconnect, isn't it, from what we're actually experiencing and what actually is on, and that disconnect from the land and our ancestry and our true selves, isn't it? So like certainly like all these these topics that you're kind of bringing back up are like so important, because we're all just lost in they're hijacking our consciousness, feeding us these third-party narratives, and we've just kind of forgotten who we are.
I think that's deliberately done as well, because they're putting this like creating a fog around it all. And I was really interested in the Carlos Castaneda works. I'm not interested in all the controversy around it. I know his stuff works.
I've read a lot of Castaneda.
So
I read it in the 80s.
I've practiced a lot of his stuff, so a lot of the recapitulation techniques. We were talking about this. I'll get back to the land thing, but just to briefly kind of highlight my interests. It's like getting rid of personal kind of preferences and creating a fog around yourself, not hiding, but just getting rid of deprogramming, right? It's a common theme in all these walks and stuff like that. But so he had everything like, this reincarnation thing, is it a good thing that we reincarnate? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's something that's just feeding energy continually, this cyclical death, rebirth, and feeding. So the way they looked at it was basically give the universe your story before you die. So you die a death while you're alive. And it's called the eagle's gift. So when you die, you can walk fully consciousness or fly fully consciousness past, they called it the eagle, the thing that might cage you in. And I've seen some interesting things in dreaming, this kind of like purgatory land or whatever it is, where you sit before you come back in and reincarnate, and you've got no memory of what happened before. I mean, why would that be anyway? There's a million questions to be had in there.
That's a big theme of our interviews, isn't it? In the law of one, they call it the veil of forgetting, or there's some kind of soul trap, or some kind of like Tony would say, remove your chakras. And Tony Sayers, our first interview with Tony, remove your chakras, don't walk away, don't walk to the false light matrix and come back again. And I think that's what you were talking about, Dave, like this kind of fourth dimensional level, which maybe when, I know you work more with the land, but say like a shaman with ayahuasca or plant medicine, that people are only perhaps getting to that point. And I suppose, is it like Valhalla? But when I was listening to your talk, then they prepare themselves in life for a good death, as perhaps the Native Americans did, so that you are kind of almost conscious in that realm enough to not be not conscious to come back. If that makes sense.
I think that's true, and I think that's one of those worlds and one of the concepts, because we live off suggestion. So we I mean, Ike's a great one at saying it. We are basically information is our kind of perception, and our perception is our behavior. So it's all about the information you take in. So this relates to this. So it's information, perception, behavior all the way. So it's all about the information you take in. So I want my information to be coming in from a good source, and for me that's from the land and the yew trees. Now Valhalla and the Norse mythology of like Yggdrasil, the tree of life, was always said to be an ash tree, but the way it's described in all the books, in the legends going back, is long-lived and needled and evergreen and red-fruited, and that's the yew tree. So the yew tree, there's a saying like the yew tree is like the umbilical point through which the far reaches of eternity break through into time, and it's the guardian.
Can you say that again, Dave?
So the yew tree is the umbilical point through which the far reaches of eternity break through into time.
Wow.
So it's like a passageway of such. They're the ancient like. So the Navajo have the Kachinas, they're the great sleeper dreamers, and they might be mountains as well. And their spirits, the Kachina spirits. To me, the great sleeper dreamers and the wisdom holders are the yew tree. So that they're kind of a portal as such. Not every yew tree, but specific trees on specific spots. Now I work in the forests up there, and I take groups out for 1 night sit outs, 2 night sit outs. I do a lot of my own, like 3-4 nights. So they have so much wisdom, and they've always been aligned to the history of humanity, the yew tree. The whole tree is toxic and poisonous, apart from the red flesh of the aril, which is the most delicious fruit, big antioxidant, full of vitamin C. But the yew tree goes back way back into like thousands and thousands and thousands of years into our history. And all that is contained within the kind of archetypal force of that tree itself. It's like locked into the spirit of the tree. So for me, I would class myself really not, I mean, a shamanic practitioner, there's a lot of that being spun around, as you say. So people have a different idea of it these days, the way it's written about. I'd say I'm just a dreamer of the earth, really, and I want to give gratitude for my life, which is so precious. And so I go and honor these sacred sites, even if they haven't been used or honored for like maybe hundreds or thousands of years. So I've gone into these forests and found specific spots that I've been led to by, in the physical, maybe an animal or a bird, and taking me straight to that spot, and then symbolically or with an omen, something crazy happens there, and I know I'll ask, is this a spot I should be dreaming with, and something will manifest. I look for that particular omen before I would start even working at that point, and then I would go out there and spend the night out and sleep and dream it. So the land dreams me and I dream into the land. So
that's beautiful.
That's an authentic dialogue that we're talking about. So there's a lot of talk of authenticity and you know, what is authenticity? I mean, I think you have to have this dialogue, and that means it's this dual exchange that the yew tree tell me that it's a dual exchange. You're exchanging ideas and dreams. They're giving something for you to participate in and see, their lesson, their teaching. You're giving your life story back to the tree itself. And you know, I go up there and tell people to, like, on the ceremony, to speak their life story to the tree in an energetic way. The tree kind of understands through an emotive response from the participant that person's story. Now, it doesn't have to, it's not understanding the language as such, but on an energetic level it understands it. And then we will relay a vision or a dream that will help that person overcome certain things that are holding them back in their life, to live a life more sacred and full of beauty. So that's what I do, and that's what I do with the land. But it's all about, well,
I was going to say, I'm ready for that. I could do that now.
So I do. So I do a lot of healing that way with the yew trees. So there's a lot of things that are hard to get over. And we try so hard with different methods, and then it's great for a month or so, and then you just slide back. So I think it's really, really important for people to be of the land rather than just from a place. It could be a grass verge somewhere, it could be an allotment, it could be by a river, it could be on the top of a mountain. My power place is in the forest. So I have a place that I go back to and I offer. You know, I give flowers, you know, like foods or just things of organic beauty, and have a dialogue. And then the land starts speaking to you. And when you want to make a commitment and a prayer out to loved ones, or a healing prayer or commitment for yourself, if you give yourself in ceremony to that place, it's more poignant, it's got more strength and authenticity to it, because you have a relationship to it. It's like you're talking to a partner. And that's the relationship we're after. We become married to the land.
Spell, isn't it? It's that dream state as well that I always kind of talk about, like an interest in with yew trees as portals, because I'm obsessed with this idea of time, and it'll thread through all the podcasts that we do, because obviously, you know, we're just energy condensed to a slow vibration, and what gives that legitimacy or matter legitimacy is time. So, and it's interesting actually. I don't know if people have seen. You know, let's nerd it up. What's it got? Stranger Things. Now the portal, there's two worlds. There's obviously the world that we experience, but they call it the upside down, and it mirrors what we have here, but it's all upside down. And they enter the upside down through a portal in a tree. And I'm pretty sure in that film it's a yew tree.
Well, that's interesting. I had a dream of pulling a yew tree out of a well, and it was upside down. So that may be something like to do with that. And
all these kind of entities and different kind of portals to these other kind of dimensional states were accessed through this. Well, it was actually accessed through her mind and opening some of the doors, but part of it, especially I think it was in the second series, they came in and out of it through the yew tree. And I know you were saying, because I love going in graveyards, I'm a big fan of it, because they're just so peaceful. And we were talking earlier, weren't we, about there's always yew trees in graveyards, but that was because these pagan sites would have been hijacked. You'll always find yew trees. And I was asking Dave, because I said, I was explaining it very badly, so I'll let you explain it in a minute. Because it's as above, so below, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the root of the yew tree is the same as its branches
Crown.
as its crown. That's the word. So yeah, tell us a bit more about that, because I know we touched on it off camera, and I just thought that was really interesting, because obviously these pagan sites have been hijacked, especially how I do the law with the dead fiction. You'll always note on tombstones or gravestones that people's names are in capitals as for the dead fiction. So when these places, these pagan spiritual sites were hijacked by, say, the Roman civil system, they like to surround the church, and church means a Roman goddess that takes people into a room to brainwash them. That's where the word church comes from. And they like to surround the spoils with the dead and put a clock on it because it's all to do with time. But
entrapment.
Yeah. So the just because I love this kind of thing, so I totally hijacked that where you were talking about time and portals and the yew trees and how that is so symbolic in those places, isn't it?
It really is, and I think another word for church goes back to Circe, I think, which means circle as well.
Yes, right, yes.
So the earliest churches by the saints that came over here, especially in Wales and places, the earliest churches were under yew trees. That was their church before the wooden churches were built, and also so in the way going along with the church theme, a lot of these places obviously were sacred sites that ancient yews grew upon as a tree of life, as kind of the axis mundi for the tribe. Places of power, and places of like learning and places of journeying too, and connecting the heavens to the earth. The roots of the tree kind of represented our kind of unconscious, subconscious state of being, psyche, and the trunk, the consciousness, the conscious material world we live in, and the higher consciousness with the crown. So it had this kind of representation to it. It's a tree of life, death, and rebirth. Now, so obviously a lot of cathedrals and churches and also economic centres have been built on sacred sites, and that's just because they're harnessing the energy of the land. And we were talking about this earlier on as well. My perception of sacred sites, stone circles, is that they're places to harness that energy. The feminine energy coming close to the surface under these, people call it spirit dragon lines, ley lines. It's the sexual energy of the earth, and where these stone circles are like acupuncture points, really they're tapping into that and highlighting that energy. So on the celestial alignments of the solstices, the equinoxes, that's the masculine energy of the universe marrying the feminine energy and creating this evolutionary consciousness going programmed into the veins of the earth. And being there at those times, humans, I know there's been said that bad things.
It's mycelium like the veins of the earth, I suppose, that interconnected.
So they're channeling, they bring all the information to the trees, and that's the dual exchange as well. So that's a really interesting point as well, because the yew tree interaction with the mycelium is so different from every other tree, because usual trees, it's the rootlets, the fine fibers on the end where they connect and have that communication. With the yew tree, the mycelium goes inside the cell itself. Right. So there's almost like this deeper connection of some sort. So yew trees are in churchyards, primarily if they're old, if they predate Christianity. That's an old pagan site that it's been hijacked. Because the old church, they were kind of like when the Romans, it wasn't all Catholicism. It was like they had this, they still honoured the old gods, and they had this pagan kind of intermarriage between the church, and the same happened over in Britain, with the tribes. They didn't want to wipe out their beliefs, their indigenous beliefs, because they would have had revolt. So they kind of merged it. So the early church was quite pagan. So they would honour the yew trees, the early kind of people who built those churches. But the newer yew trees, the yew tree itself is one of the greatest oxygenators, and you wouldn't believe it because it's fine needled, but they're the best oxygenator. So in medieval times, when they buried people, they were quite close to the surface, and there's this putrid smell in the air. So the yew tree itself would actually cleanse the air. So some of it's there for that.
That's very interesting. The difference between the different levels of consciousness. If you go back, as far as you can get, where conditions arise for life to start taking a hold. And obviously there's plants and trees and all the rest of it before sort of animals. I don't know whether that's true or not, how that works, but all the same, that the difference of something that can move around that's more self-aware, the consciousness of a tree, some people won't believe that they're conscious. I do. Yeah. I believe consciousness is in everything.
Yeah, of course.
It's just in a different state.
Yeah.
You know, there are definitely higher, lighter levels of consciousness, different densities, so to speak. But where the yew tree is concerned, or other trees, but especially the yew tree, it's so ancient that the connection that you have may even predefine some concepts that you could come up with because it was there before it. So I'm very interested to know that when you dream, and you dream with that, and you get this thing coming back from the yew tree, you give to it, it gives to you. Is that right?
That's the dual exchange sort of thing.
That exchange, yeah.
And interestingly, I think Charles Darwin, whatever you believe in the evolutionary kind of thought, I think he was buried.
Full on evolution.
No, but I think he was buried under a yew tree, and so was Lewis Carroll. So they had these fantastical people who had these great connections to the yew tree.
And Lewis Carroll wrote Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. So you know, and also the yew tree gives off
Wordsworth. I visited his grave. It's in
Grasmere. Yeah, that's right. I've just been there on this pilgrimage. That's full of yew trees. Yeah. And there's a fraternal 4 yew trees. There's only 3 of them left. He wrote that great poem, The Fraternal 4, which is in Seathwaite, up in the Borrowdale Valley, and that's about the yew trees. These 4 yew trees. There's only 3. One got taken down by a storm, and that they're ancient, and they're set in this ancient stone circle, which is aligned 4,500 years ago to the star system Draco. Yeah. And it has the golden ratio in it and everything like this, and it's only just been discovered in 2003. This is getting weirder. Yeah, and that has a cross, so it's obviously bouldered, granite boulders, and it's obviously a sphere, circle, like mathematically aligned to the solstices, equinoxes, lunar cycles, but it has a cross going through it as well, and a serpent going up through that cross. It's very sophisticated for people that far back without any tools. Anyway, we hear about that. That's another subject.
That's another podcast.
So yew trees. So I mean, they predate humanity. You know, I mean, I think the yew tree in its form as it is now goes back. I don't know, is it 60 million, 70 million years ago? It goes back like 250 million years. I think Ginkgo biloba is the only tree that predates the yew. Right. So they have this consciousness in their makeup and their genes anyway, and their DNA. So this is what we're trying to plug into, that information. And so like, look, we're magical beings, all of us, you know, and we're a double being. We have a conscious physical reality. We have a dream energy body, that which walks consciously and dreams awake. And we can put the idea is to put this consciousness into that dream energy body, so we can defy the laws of physics in a dream state. So the yew tree themselves, what I found, and others have participated in some of my work, they facilitate that crossover. So they help. I don't know how it is done, it doesn't matter, but I know for a fact through my experiences that they will help you split in 2 places. Perception, your perception can be in 2 places at once. So you may be like laying down asleep under the yew tree, let's say, and then you'll be dancing with your feathers over in the grove. But each figure, consciousness, the person laying down, me laying down, will see myself dancing. Myself dancing will see myself laying down. I've even had it from a third point of reference, where I'm watching the sleeper and the dreamer, but they can't see me, but I can see them too. But I can see the dancer. Wow. I can't see the third person. I can see the sleeper from my dancing perspective. And it sounds crazy. And what's the point of doing that? This is what we were going back to earlier on about, I think, or we were talking before, is to escape this kind of reincarnation trap. I think the idea is to be able to get your consciousness into this dream energy body, because that's what you journey with. At the end of time, the physical dies and the consciousness goes somewhere, and it hasn't got a container to take it.
It's interesting because that makes sense. It's this kind of, it's that alchemical kind of lead to gold in it. If you're thinking, and it's that thing with time and matter, that you are this heavy, dense, you know, this transhumanism that they're trying to push. This, let's call it the crown poison. You know, corona.
it's dark.
Crime poison. So they're trying to keep us in matter, I think. And this, like say, if you've not prepared yourself Valhalla style for a good death, or as the North Americans do, because you're aware of spirit, you've come to that realization in this existence that we, not this crude matter are we, as Yoda says, then you're ready to kind of, when you do kind of cross over, you're not perhaps going to get swept into that cyclical soul trap of reincarnation, and you get to kind of go, do you know what, I'm out, and hop off.
I want to experience somewhere else because it's infinite,
because you're ready to do that, or you've, I think Tony says, like, the fact that Earth's some kind of, he's great, Tony, and he's very, this is what he thinks, and, and that's what he thinks, so, good on him, because he sticks to it, and it's like, whereas I'm always kind of, I'm dead Gemini, kind of, I just want to learn about everything, not quite sure, like, but I do kind of have, like, certain thoughts on things, but, it's not a Earth school. This is bullshit. It's not about learning lessons. They're fucking trapping you here. And I'm like, well, maybe they are, But like saying that, in that essence, we have, like, know thyself in it. You know thyself in this this matter, this dense. You can transmute that lead to gold. Alchemical styling, Johnny.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I also think that, it's a bit cliche to say use all the positives, but it's necessary to comprehend the differences between being grateful, gratitude for others, for the land, for love itself, but all of those things, generosity, there's being loving and kind and all these other things. Lots of things here to get in the way of that. So many things to get in the way of all those things. But what I admire is your story is, you've got to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's based upon love anyway. It's all about that, isn't it? Being close, being in harmony, being in gratitude. For me, I don't see how you're going to go wrong there unless there's something we're missing, and I don't really see what it is. Your truth is your truth.
Yeah.
You know that I've been a Buddhist.
Yeah.
And that's a different approach. There's no God in that, really. It is all down to you to do it. And it's difficult. It's difficult simply because of the nature of the archonic control that is over us at this moment in time. How do you navigate your way around that with the practices that you do?
So I think in the most simplistic way I can, so to get away from the complexities, which is the trap itself as well. And like you say, this Watiko, this mind virus, the archonic force, it's there to trip us up and feed on
mind
negative.
Virus,
the parasitic mind virus from the depths of the universe, which kind of interacts
Don't say
with
the
this.
B word.
No, well, it's a parasite. It's a mind control,
exactly.
and it operates from the lower fourth dimensional kind of frequency. It's where the kind of these forces. It's where these forces manipulate the mind of humanity. And like the power of wisdom is silence. Okay, so it's about finding that silence, and it's not about economic rendering. Just like trying to clear yourself on the surface and think, I've done all the cleansing and stuff like that. You've got to go deep.
Gotta go deep.
You've got to go deep. And it's going to hurt. And there's going to be some grief because it's not like looking.
It shines.
It's
beautiful.
I walked the Lake District. I took a couple of years off work, and I went up to the Lake Districts and just walked those mountains for a couple of years. And the grief, things that I'd thought I'd taken out of myself, and it's not all about grief. And I know it's not about that, but you've got to become accessible to spirit and to the landscape and the waters and the waterfalls and the lakes up there. They could just take you down to your knees.
That hollow bone thing.
I've done a waterfall just recently up in the lakes.
There's a band called Hollow Bone.
Under it for ages, and
they can just trigger like this stuff that you can't even relate to.
It's
that comes
nature,
out.
It's experiential language, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah, it is.
This is what I want to focus on now more than anything else. A new experiential language. I won't say it's new, but that's what we really need to be doing, determining how to express these things with each other.
That's the authenticity.
Rather than just waffling on, about I know this and I know that. Because God,
mental masturbation,
Mental
masturbation. Like get down and dirty with the earth, and, like she will kick you.
No, no, it's true.
Then you let it in, you empty out, become hollow boned, to say, and you empty this stuff out, and then things can come in to help heal and shut you up and sew you up, and weave you back into the fabric of life. It's like we're pulling on the end of this. We look at life as a tapestry, a beautiful rug. We're kind of threadbare now. We just pulled it apart, and you've just got these. What we're trying to do is sing our way back into that reweaving, and that's all I'm doing. That's all I propose to do with people. I don't propose to teach them anything. I'm just someone who can guide and know what's helped me. Yeah. They will get their own interpretation from the work they do, even by following a certain kind of instruction, just like a template, let's say. But people find their own way into it. So, wisdom is to find the simplicity in the complexities, right? So that's true wisdom. So people love complexities.
Yeah, because my brain loves it.
But that's the mechanical mind, you see. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. I'm not very rational, so that's why I see myself as a dreamer, because I find that easier. But Castaneda always talked about these points of reference of a dreamer and a stalker. A dreamer is someone who gets their energy from the dream time, dreaming awake. A stalker is someone who gets it in the everyday world.
Yeah.
So, you might look at that as someone who's more creative, or someone who's more kind of logical. There's no right or wrong. No. We both need each other, and we have both of that inside ourselves, but we generally have a strength more tending to one of those, either of the two.
It might be the wisdom to know the difference, I suppose, again, like almost kind of preparing your soul again, isn't it? I was watching some video today, and someone was talking about when I think it was George, I can never say his last name, Cavalasco, we'll try and get him on.
Yeah, sounds Italian.
I think he's Greek. Cavalis, oh my days. I've even tried practicing saying it. That's it. I think. And he was talking about the word soul as the word spirit. It's sharper, one's kind of like more kind of elongated. And he was saying about, again, and Arthur Christian talked about this. We interviewed him on my other podcast, Inverted Reality is a plug. And this connect to nature, and what we actually, like you guys were just talking about then, that's very sensory. I know when I'm, hyper focusing and my brain it's whirling, but and I know you're the same, Johnny, because we talk about this, I can be out like a Jill in a box, like, and people think I'm like that all the time. Right. They might see me having a bit of a tinny or doing a talk. People think that I'm constantly like that. Oh my days, I would burn out, So if I don't get to nature, if I don't go and hug the dog and stroke the cat, and literally I will go walking for hours and hours when I'm at home. I'll read a lot when I'm at home. People, you would think it was two different people. It's my Gemini personality, but I suppose what I'm getting at is, like, just in simple terms, that recharge from nature, and taking my shoes off and grounding, just that's like what Arthur,
lots of swimming in the sea.
Lots of wild swimming. I love my wild swimming. I'll be driving past somewhere one way, and I'll just like launch. Stop! I'll just go launch myself in somewhere, and that obviously the sea remineralizes us when we walk barefoot on the earth or hug a yew tree. It's just something that's just so lost, isn't it? Which is why they're trying to get us into 15-minute cities and eating junk food and this toxicity and this parasitical, Babylonian, Vatican, viral, venal nonsense, and reconnecting back to basically who we are, isn't it? Know thyself.
But there is always a rejuvenation when you get out into nature. I like doing it on my own as well. I prefer that, actually.
Oh yeah, I have to.
I did have a wonderful experience only a few months back. Sat under a waterfall. It was on the estate where I was working on. You might have been on that.
Nick.
Yeah, in
the G. Yeah.
It's a lovely waterfall.
Beautiful, yeah.
I was sat under that, but sat in silence, but it's not silent. It's very loud, and I watch it splashing everywhere and doing all the rest of it. Then it cut my ears, and it sounds different. It gets louder. I can hear stuff over here. But after a while, I swear to God, it sounded like there were voices in it. It sounded like there was some kind of like celestial singing coming from it.
Yeah.
I am not, honestly.
Yeah, no.
And I thought, am I going mad? Is it because I got tinnitus as well? I thought, because you can't hear that under this waterfall. It all becomes like one. Yeah. But then I realised that the analogy was there about life. Like it comes crashing over, bouncing off all the rocks, going down a little bit of a rapid, and it's a nice pool, nice calm bit. But it's on its way to the ocean. It goes back to the source. Nothing's lost. Nothing's just keeps going round in that sense, doesn't it? Yeah. And it's one beautiful cycle. And I actually believe that water is the source of all life.
Of course, it's
absolutely, without any question. I mean, you do need the other things as well if you're going to grow food and all that, but without it, there's nothing, is there? But it was that lovely analogy. And since then, I've been turning taps on, and I can hear little tunes in it.
That's beautiful.
And I keep wondering if it's me that's nuts, but I don't care, because I actually started to pay attention.
Well, it's Lewis Carroll again, isn't it?
What is going on there? What's going on there?
You don't have to be nuts to be here, but it helps.
Yeah, well, that's the song of, like, that's the song of the water, you know, because you know, over the period of time of sitting there, which is like we promote greatly sit outs, and obviously you go through all that mental kind of stuff, you know, what the hell am I doing here? All these excuses to get up and walk away, you know, like we say, we do it for a long periods of time, but an hour, 2 hours under a waterfall, you drop your defences, that hollowing out again, you know, it's so kind of unusual for your being that you kind of trick yourself into this kind of vulnerability. So you're interpreting the sound of the waterfall in a way that it wants you to understand it and pick up its language. Now, wherever that comes from, whatever that is about, that's your connection to the water itself. That'd be completely like sovereign to you and like unique to you, how you interpret that. But this is what we're doing to be amongst the land and the waterfalls and to basically, it's like, you know, it's about a path of beauty, and it's walking as children in wonderment, like we did as children. We forget all that. It's like being a child, not childish, but childlike, you know, having that wonderment and that gentleness with the earth and that. But, you know, that's where the greatest strength and power comes from, is like the beauty of a flower is more powerful than a sword. And it's you know, there is not an ugly flower, right? I mean,
it's the sacred geometry, isn't it? It's the Fibonacci of everything.
The scent of it, the feel, the touch of the petals,
it's like, intelligent design of everything.
It's a master of intelligence. You know, the flowers have so much beauty, and obviously with all the flower remedies and everything like that, and the medicine they give, you know, and all the plants, of course, but. You know, I've got a great thing of like connecting. Is like, you know, we do work around the medicine wheel, which is kind of a tradition going back down through like the Central Americas and that. But it's like an elemental table, but it's like also a map of our own psyche and our humanity, but also like of the kind of universe as well. You know, and you just go around this wheel of life, they call it. You know, you have the east, which is aligned to the fire element. It's aligned to spring. It's conception. It's energetic, it's energy, it's like creativity, and that represents our birthing. You know, you move around to the south, that's water, that's our emotive state, that's summer, and it's all about feelings and the plant life and the plant world. Around to the west is the air, the breath of life, it's our mind, it's coming from the heart, it's our voice, it's our song, and the north is the earth itself. And it's a physicality, it's a slowing down of vibration to manifest this material world. It's the mountains, it's the ancestors, it's the earth itself. And we stand in the center of that. And as sacred humans,